We're recording this meeting, and it will be posted on our website later. So if you have colleagues who aren't able to be here this afternoon, you'll be able to direct them to the recording after about a week or so. And we are going to go ahead and get started. We know that there are others who will be joining us, but we also want to respect your time. So again, welcome. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. It would be great if you could share your name, your pronouns, and maybe your favorite end of summer meal. My name is Nessa Richmond. I'm the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, and I'm really excited that today we're having our first Policy for the People session of this council year. And we are going to take time today to review what happened at the State House in the last session. This is a really important step in the process of planning our advocacy for 2026. So we're going to be preserving time for discussion, a lot of discussion time later in the call. But for now, what we would love to do is to ask you, as questions arise to you, to put your comments and questions into the chat. So we'll come back to them, but for now, we're going to go ahead and ask you to put those in the chat. If you've just joined us, please go ahead and put your name and pronouns and your favorite summer meal, if you'd like to share that, into the chat. And we are going to go ahead and get started. So whoever is in charge of slides can go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So as we always do, we want to go ahead and share our mission statement at the start of our call. So the mission statement for the Rhode Island Food Policy Council has been the same since our establishment in 2011, and that is to build a more equitable, accessible, economically vibrant, and environmentally sustainable food system in the state of Rhode Island. And we always like to share that at the beginning to set the tone for our discussion. We are an independent nonprofit organization. We're not affiliated with the state or any political bodies in the state. And we're driven by our members who are volunteers who believe in this mission. We have a small staff and a board of directors who are helping to steer the way. You can move to the next slide. So the next thing I want to share is just that, we operate thinking about the whole food system. The food system we like to share in this relatively simple graphic, just saying that we focus on everything that's on the inside of that circle. So that's food production, processing, and manufacturing, distribution, and aggregation. It relates to all different kinds of food retail and food access, and also the way that we handle our food waste. And a strong food system also relies on the things on the outer part of the circle, so the words in yellow. Everybody needs access to clean air, clean water, healthy soil and land for growing, and also the capital that folks need to start and run businesses and nonprofit organizations. So no matter where people are in the system, they need access to all of these things. And together, all of these things create the whole food system that we and all of our communities have. So when we talk about food system legislation and we talk about bills and laws that affect the food system, we're talking about bills that impact the things on the inside of this circle and also on the outer circle. So that's a lot of different bills that we follow, and we have a few, as you know, that we prioritize. So the last thing I want to share before we dive into the topics of, the core topic of today is our commitment to equity. And our commitment to equity really provides us with a lens and underpins all of the work that we do toward our mission. And we recognize that there's an ongoing need to restate our commitment to equity explicitly. And with that, I want to go ahead and share this with you. The Council recognizes the fact that many negative impacts of Rhode Island's current food system are grounded in a history of colonialism, genocide of indigenous people, slavery, private ownership of land, and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of too few. We also recognize that people with visible and non-apparent disabilities are among the most marginalized groups in our country. The Council believes that when power shifts to be shared more equitably across our communities and our state, We transform our future together for generations to come. This is a commitment that evolves over time, and we will be supporting the development of a new iteration that we'll be announcing soon at our policy retreat. But we use it today to help us listen and learn together. And we ask you that you keep it in the front of your mind when we think about all the ways that Rhode Island's laws are helping or failing to help us at furthering our ability to live into this commitment. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Rachel Newman-Green, who is the Rhode Island Food Policy Council's Associate Director for Network, to tell you more.
Nessa. So yeah, I wanted to first off start by thanking the members of the council who've been participating throughout the summer in our annual review of our commitment to equity and our meeting agreements. And just to give you an update on that, as Nessa said, we are developing reiteration of it that will be completed and discussed at our upcoming policy retreat. The Food Policy Council focuses our work in three core areas: food access and nutrition security, which is on building equitable, culturally relevant solutions to food and nutrition access problems; in the area of food business and economic development, empowering farmers, aquaculturists, fishers, and food entrepreneurs to thrive; and in the area of food, climate, and environment, addressing issues at the intersection of climate change and food systems. So we are next going to move into reviewing what happened during the 2025 legislative session in these areas of interest to us. And with that, I am going to, let's see. So first off, our legislative work focused in 4 areas that intersect with the 3 topics I mentioned before. Our council worked on legislative efforts to boost supports for local composts, to incentivize surplus food donation, to provide healthy school meals for all, and to reduce tax burdens for urban and small farmers. The majority of these issues will be fast forwarding into next session. What we always say in this work is that it is very much of a marathon, not a sprint. So there are things that did make very serious progress during the last legislative session, and definitely things that will carry forward into the next. All of these bills were introduced and had hearings held in the legislature, which is definitely no small feat. That's a big victory on the part of many of the efforts of our council members. But there definitely is more work that remains to get done to bring these over the finish line. One RIFPC priority, specifically in preserving active farmland, was incorporated into the state budget for this fiscal year as a part of the green bond, which goes before the voters at the November election. So there will be $5 million in that bond, in that budget, dedicated to preserving active farmland. So it does await voter approval, but Rhode Island voters have historically approved bonds by very large margins. So we're going to have to wait to November to see what happens, but it does seem fairly likely that the green bond will be approved and more farmland can be preserved. And there were many other food system bills that made it over the finish line as well in this past year. With that, I'm going to turn it to Isaac Berg, who is our program director for food, climate, and environment, to talk about the priorities that were worked on in that area. Isaac.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, as far as our RIFPC priorities that were identified this past year, obviously was the compost fund. We had the 2 bills, H5195 and S104, heard in both houses. They were, of course, held for further study, as all bills are. The general idea there, for anyone who's not aware of the bill, is that it puts a $2 surcharge on all waste going to the landfill, and that would fund a competitive grant fund, so that 50% would go to a competitive fund, and then 50% would go straight back to the municipalities. We had some good participation from our members this year. At least 12 to 14 members testified on both bills, both in person and, with written testimony, and so we always welcome folks throughout to continue doing that type of support. We did run into some opposition from the League of Cities and Towns, who is a pretty influential group that represents the municipalities in the state, as the fee that is being charged would, in many cases, at least have to initially come from the municipalities, and even if they would be getting it back on coming back to them. There was also some concerns about yeah, I very much welcome your point there, Carla, about imagine the fee when the landfill is full. But there was also some concern about the complexity of the bill from legislators, which when you have 39 different municipalities handling trash in 39 different ways, there's going to necessarily be a little bit of complexity. But we are working with the League of Cities and Towns, with some potential funders, on a lot of different options and opportunities on how we can maybe look to restructure that, and make it more successful, whether that looks like pilots or other different ways of moving that forward. Another policy that we had was the food donation tax credit. So we had a hearing in the House this year, but not the Senate. In the tough fiscal environment, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later, there were concerns about the cost of the bill. But that was an opportunity for education, I think, as there was some thoughts that the bill would be a lot more costly than it actually was. As to why there was no hearing in the Senate, that was primarily due to all of the different machinations with the Senate president and when bills were getting introduced. And as I said, the concern about the cost of the bill and in the fiscal environment. So we're going to work with the bill sponsors to see about moving that forward in the future. Program-related bills, these are ones that we didn't necessarily identify as priorities, but I might suggest are both related as well as things we want to look at or support. There was a companion school composting bill. This one just focused on updating the rules of what schools are required to do around composting and existing laws, as it's not really been enforced going forward. We have a great report coming out on some of the existing laws, so you can read more about that in the coming days. And then there is a bottle bill and EPR bill that was introduced. There were a couple different versions of those, and obviously a lot of what comes in those bottles are food, and it affects the food system. And so I think that's something that the group may want to look further into this coming year. And thank you, Josh, for the EPR is extended producer responsibility. And then we also are looking at a bill that DEM would be able to keep the the restricted receipts from fees that they are collecting from farmers and other things to actually work for the farmers who are being charged those fees. And so that's something we'd love to see and support, our farmers and food industry. So that is where I'll leave it.
Great. Thanks, Isaac. Okay, so I'll speak to the FANS, we call it, the Food Access and Nutrition Security efforts in the past session. So the work group focused on the Healthy School Meals for All effort, which would offer school meals to all Rhode Island public school students at no out-of-pocket cost to them or their families. Other bills that the FANS work group focused on included the effort to fund the Bonus Bucks program. If you're not familiar with it, that program doubles dollars that SNAP users spend at local farmers markets. And we discussed a bill to fund a pilot program that would measure the impact of Meals on Wheels, providing medically tailored meals to people in need throughout the state. The healthy school meals for all bills were introduced in the and heard in the finance committees of both the House and Senate. We had lots of great testimony. I see faces here for folks who both came in person to testify and submitted written testimony. There also was great support from a broad coalition for folks around the state, but it did not manage to move forward in this session for a lot of the same reasons that Isaac was talking about turnover in the leadership and budget concerns, et cetera. But I would say it's noteworthy that while we were working on this, New York became the 9th state in the country that passed legislation to provide universal school meals. And those states include many of our New England neighbors here. So we are sure to see the healthy school meal bills move forward, perhaps in different forms in the coming sessions. The bonus bucks and medically tailored meal efforts also didn't move forward. I will say it's likewise notable that many of our New England neighboring states do fund bonus bucks like programs for their SNAP users and local growers. Rhode Island kind of stands out as one of the few nearby states that doesn't do this. So it's anticipated that that effort is going to continue also into future sessions. Some food security efforts that did move forward included eliminating the reduced price category for school meals. So what that means is, typically there is students who income qualify for free meals and students who income qualify for reduced price meals, and then students who pay full price for school meals. What this legislation meant, it eliminated that reduced price category. So it meant that everyone who previously qualified for a reduced price meal now does get free meals. The second, another food access and security and nutrition security law in this session that passed enabled a 2-year waiver on the whole grain requirements in school meals. I think opinions on that are divided among folks who focus on child nutrition and food security, but many supporters feel that that waiver to the whole grain requirements is helpful in making sure that meals are appealing and that they're actually consumed by as many students as possible. So a lot of folks do see that as an important victory in making sure that as many children are eating school meals as we can have. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Josh Daly, who is our Associate Director for Operations, and he is going to talk about the year's developments in food, business, and economic development. Josh, give me a moment to find you in I'm going to take off my spotlight, and I'm going to hold on a second. I'm having a technical.
I think Josh can get started because the spotlight doesn't matter that much when you're sharing slides.
It really doesn't. Okay. Let me hold on one second.
All right, if you can go to the next slide.
I can. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. So as Rachel mentioned, I'll be talking about the activity in our food business and economic development part of our work. So just before I get into what's on the slide, I'll say what didn't make the slide. We had some great work and conversations among our food business work group on supports and resources for second stage food businesses, scaling food businesses, and for promoting local Rhode Island food brands, Rhode Island grown and Rhode Island seafood brands. So I'm happy to share more about that if people are interested in learning more about that. But for this session, because we're talking about policy, wanted to talk about the main policy priority that we had in this area of our work, which was our Urban and Small Farm Success Act. So the basics of that are that it would extend tax breaks enjoyed by larger farms to urban and small farms, to farms that are under 5 acres. We know that, our farms that are larger, enjoy tax breaks around income, property tax, sales tax, right? And those things don't apply to the state's many urban and small farms. So that's the basics of what the bill was about. It was reintroduced again this last session. It was first introduced the session before, had some really good momentum and wins around it. When it was first introduced 2 years ago, it only had a House bill. It was introduced late in the session and just had a House bill with one representative. And so this year it had a House and Senate bill with strong sponsors and many co-sponsors. It had hearings in the House and Senate. And I think in particular, some of the strongest work that was done was in the first year. There were questions and there was some opposition from the Farm Bureau and from the League of Cities and Towns, specifically around, some of the details of how this would be applied. So for instance, property taxes as it pertains to an urban farm, could it be abused? And someone says, I've got a garden in my backyard, so I shouldn't have to pay property taxes. So we really clarified for them and for everyone the mechanisms in the bill for making sure that food is being grown for sale and for community. And so because of that and some great work that our members did, we were able to shift the Farm Bureau and League of Cities and Towns from opposition to support of this. And ultimately it passed out. It was heard in the Finance Committee in both the House and the Finance Committee in the Senate. It passed out of the House based on a lot of work by the sponsor. It was held in the Senate for further study. That partially was due to timing. As I think you may be aware, there are a lot of bills that get introduced and heard over the course of the session, and so it passed out of the House literally at the very, very last minute of the session, and so there just wasn't time to make it to get it passed out of the Senate as well. So, but it's in a really strong place for the year to come to get it moved forward, and we're going to be continuing to work on it and advocate on it and anticipate some continuing good momentum and hopefully that this will be the year that it passes coming up. The other one to note that's always a priority for us is the Local Agriculture and Seafood Act grant program. That was established a number of years ago, one of the first policy priorities of the Food Policy Council when it was started back in 2011. And it gives small grants up to $20,000 to farm and seafood businesses and organizations supporting them. And it's enjoyed good support over the years, and it was level funded this year. So last year it was funded at $500,000. It's funded again at $500,000. So that's a good win. It did the year before that, it was funded at $700,000. There were some additional federal dollars, the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding that was coming through. So I think that's a big win and something that we again anticipate needing to advocate for. And lots of, yes, so Nessa points out that the beginnings of that program, it was initially funded in a pilot phase through 3 key foundations: Rhode Island Foundation, Kendall Foundation, and Van Buren Charitable Trust. And I think it's a very good sign the state has, as was the plan from the beginning, has taken up the funding for it and has continued to fund it even in, as I think folks know, a challenging fiscal year this year. So some good wins and some good momentum to share in this area of our work.
Thank you, Josh. Okay, so I want to give a couple of points about general trends that we saw in this past year. There's definitely increased recognition of food system as a priority by the General Assembly, which is great. I think awareness of food system issues overall is rising because of our national landscape and our local economic landscape. So we had bills introduced and had really great conversations and moved the work forward on all 4 of the RIFPC policy priorities. And the final fiscal year 25 budget for the state is nearly $14.5 billion and does include victories on some of the bills. The other thing that I'll say is that we saw really in addition to growth in legislator awareness, we had some really excellent opportunities during the past year for many Food Policy Council members to engage in advocacy at the State House for the very first time. And I think it's really exciting to see the momentum that we're seeing around this work overall. With that, I want to introduce David Dedekian, who is a long-term council member. He is one of the leaders of our monthly Policy Cafe conversations, where we talk about all things that are happening in the State House. And I'd love to give you time, David, to share your thoughts on the past on the past session, on general trends, and anything else. And then after that, we'll open it up to a question and answers and conversations with everyone. David, love to
Sounds
hear your
great.
thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rachel. I appreciate it. It's good. I think I see a lot of new names here, which is always great to see. Thank you for joining. The last session, unfortunately, Steve's not here, and Steve gives a really deep dive. I'm going to give more of a general big picture. The last session really was interesting in that not a lot happened, but in many ways, a lot of changes and a lot of preparation happened. We got a new Senate president. Her feelings were definitely seen at the end of the session there, but I believe Senator Lawson will be much more out there and prevalent on a policy in the next session. It's an interesting next session in that it will be it's always interesting when it's a election year. So keep that in mind when talking about issues in 2026. But when I say that not a lot happened in the last session, it really focused on the fact that the budget was very big and it's the largest budget we've ever had, as you can see on the screen there, and we don't have a lot of resources in the state at the moment. And that a lot of those resources that went to Speaker Shekarchi's priority of housing, which I think none of us can complain about that. It was good to see. Unfortunately, that did lead to a lot of shortfalls in other areas that, while not exactly part of the food system, everything is really tangential to the food system. So, we're all watching the RIPTA problems going on because of budgeting. Issues like that really do affect everyone across the board, but it can affect the food system. Uh, the housing bills do help in some ways, in many ways, for the food system. So that's good. It's good to see. But unfortunately, we do sometimes it takes away from things like healthy school meals, or the attention from things like the urban farms, small urban farms support, which is too bad. I think everything. Obviously, we care about the food system issues, so we want to see those things rise to the top. And as everyone did point out, it was a very good year for those policies. I won't say that it wasn't, but there's a very crowded field. And I don't think that the next session will be any less crowded. If anything, it may be a little more crowded because going back to that big picture, I don't have to tell any of you here, we're seeing a lot of turmoil coming from the federal government, and that is really starting to affect things here, more and more so as we move on. It will affect things on the local level, and obviously in dollars and cents. I mean, that's going to definitely cause problems in jobs, regardless of your position on wind farms. And I don't really call them wind farms, but everyone does. On wind energy, that is a huge blow to manufacturing and work in the state, which affects people's pocketbooks, which affects people's purchasing power. I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic, if any, there are very few, but if any, local purchasing went up a lot. Farms saw a lot of increase of direct sales, and we're not seeing that right now in any sense because there's not a shortage anywhere else. It's not the same type of issues as the pandemic, but everyone's feeling the pinch. Everyone's feeling that the pinch from farms and producers and restaurants and things of that nature, and obviously that also affects food insecurity, and donations to these organizations. Uh, Vernon, very good point. That could be an issue for finances. Really, it's unfortunate that we're just in a really big state of turmoil, and also that includes what will happen next year with the election year. For the first time a couple of weeks ago, Speaker Shekarchi did not say a flat out no when asked if he was going to run for governor, which will, if he does, I don't, I can't really predict elections by any means, but it will certainly cause some fluctuations. It'll cause yeah, I would assume paying attention to the issues during the session. If he's running, a campaign for governor, it'll certainly put McKee on his heels. And so, things like that will cause a little more turmoil. We also have a bit of turmoil in the Commerce Department, which oversees some of the issues for the food system. Josh mentioned a couple of programs that recently ended, which were good, but we don't technically have a Secretary of Commerce at the moment, and it's again issues that we find ourselves in a very odd spot of the very coming to a head all at once. I try to remain optimistic generally. I'm not as optimistic as late, but I try not to be completely pessimistic. It is impressive to see governors in Minnesota and Illinois standing up for their states. I hope we have the same standing up here in Rhode Island. Certainly, we're not as big on the radar as the other states, but I mean, Providence certainly is an important city in the Northeast. So, Greg, it's a it's a valid point. I don't know if I'd go so far as saying competent, but definitely interesting choice, especially when put up against the personality of the president of the Commerce Association, Commerce Department. So that's kind of the big picture, the big overview. I really, like to see Q&A. I'd like to hear what people are thinking and what people are hoping for, and I know everyone else on the council does as well. So I'm going to turn it back to Rachel for that.
Rachel, you're
You're
on
on
mute.
mute, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you for your insight, David. As always, your measured optimism is always appreciated. I'll put it that way. So yeah, now we'll open it up to Q&A. I did see some things happening in the chat earlier. I believe, let's see, there was some conversation and some questions specifically from Charlotte around Isaac's points on tipping fees, the compost, and other things. And Greg also had some comments on that. Charlotte or Greg, do you want to bring up your comments and questions on those things?
Oh, hi, this is Charlotte. I think I was just under a false impression that the tipping fees are increasing at like every year, like people are getting charged more. So if anyone just knows a little more about that, maybe Greg or maybe one of y'all from the council.
I'll chime in a little bit. Tipping fees are supposedly set by the legislature, and they had not raised the tipping fee since it had been created when they opened the landfill. When we started doing the compost initiative, we started talking about that we needed to raise tipping fees in order to make compost possible. I cannot remember what it was before, but as he was on the way out the door, the previous director of resource recovery, Mike O'Connell, raised tipping fees. Not nothing, but not hugely. And that helped some. So, but the $61 that it is now is way less than any of our nearby states pay. Everybody else is paying a lot more. You go down to like Alabama and Mississippi where you can dump anywhere as long as it's poor people's neighborhood. Tipping fees are lower. But if you're sending it out of state, you're going to send it on a boat or you're going to send it on a train. And so it's like, we're still massively underpaying. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Greg obviously has a much better understanding of the history of these things, but I'll just say that it is, I believe, $63 now. It was $58 as of fiscal year 2024. So it has gone up about $5. I don't know how often it has gone up prior to that. As Greg was alluding to, it's $115 for commercial waste, and the rates being charged in Massachusetts and other places are in the $120-$140 range. So either we're going to see short term that they're going to go up, or we're going to see a long term big cliff. So
Thanks. I also saw a comment from Michael in the chat about why there's no Senate hearing. I assume that's also on the compost question. Do folks have any insight on that?
It really
I
just
think
comes down to the sponsors and the heads of the committees. It's I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but it's what they can manage to see and talk about during the committee meetings. Uh, so you know it's hard to say, but you really when a bill comes out, my best suggestion is always hammer the sponsor and then try and talk to the head of the committee that it's under.
This is, I think, a really important connection with what the Rhode Island Food Policy Council does, especially through our on-call advocates program. So we have different ways that people can engage. Not everybody can come to a work group meeting once a month or show up at the State House in person, when a hearing is held. But when we know that something important is happening, when a sponsor needs to hear that they need to prioritize that bill not being held for further study, but really being passed out of that committee, that's when we activate the On-Call Advocates Network. And if you're signed up for that network, then you receive an email telling you that it now is the time to reach out and ask for that piece of legislation to be prioritized and to be passed out of committee and to actually get to a vote. It's a very important time, and that's our best way that we've come up with, the On-Call Advocates program, to support things really getting over the finish line. So one thing that we're really excited to be able to strengthen and grow in the coming session.
Thank you for that, Nessa. Vernon, I see a question for you, but first I want to say that, Nessa, you also had put a question in there about what the state can do to help protect people who may lose their SNAP benefits, and looking at what other states are doing. So I don't know if you want to say more about that question, or we definitely have many informed and expert people who are in the Zoom space right now, I think, who can also speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know everything about what's happening mechanically, but I do understand that there are going to be big cuts to SNAP for all states because of decisions at the federal level. And I assume that, that states are making different sorts of decisions based on their capacities and their levels of determination. And I'm just wondering if anybody on the call knows about what is or may be happening around SNAP in the state, really at the functional level, and then also at the advocacy level, if anybody has heard about that or, wants to comment on it. I'll just say I've heard about a couple of other states. I think Massachusetts, in Massachusetts, the governor has put out a statement around creating a task force to address this issue. And I believe that they're seeking funding to fund that task force. And then in Colorado, I believe the governor has made an announcement that state funds will be used to ensure that anyone who loses federal funding receives benefits equivalent for food purchase for the next 2 years.
Vernon, I see your hand. Is your point on that, or is it a different question?
Yeah, I put my question in the chat, but to Nessa's point, yeah, there's a lot going on at the mechanical level. I was actually able to compile it into a document here, notes and stuff. So just off the top of my head, I do know that we are one of the states that will qualify just by, previous numbers for some of the increased like payments that are going to be needed from other states. So yeah, if you'd like me to like pass this along to you all and you can like disperse it to the group, I could definitely send it in an email.
This is actually a great opportunity to promote our listserv. Vernon, if you email to community@rifoodcouncil.org, that will go out to our listserv. And I encourage anyone who is in our council work groups and anything else to please use that as a way to distribute information to any of the other council members that you'd like to be sharing information with.
Can I add something to that? Sorry
sure.
to interrupt. I think it's wonderful that we have the listserv. There's been a few times where I've gotten emails, and because people like went to put the email the day that an event was happening, and then that kind of I get a digest at the end of the day, I missed out on opportunities to get, take action or that kind of thing. So it might just be good to, mention to people if we can, like, hey, if you can get your emails in through the listserv a day ahead of any calls to action, or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
That's all.
people can choose. That's a very good point. People can choose that. Some folks just get a weekly summary also. So you can definitely, if you're on the listserv, you can choose if you want to get every email that comes through, or if you want a daily or weekly summary. So that's a good point. And I think that we can talk about that as our next council year starts, and make sure that everybody is sort of up to speed on how to use the listserv most effectively. Thanks. Christine, what did you share in the chat there about the Massachusetts SNAP Coalition? I don't know if you can come off.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christine. Sorry I'm late. I'm with in Massachusetts in the South Coast area. And I am from the Marion Institute South Coast Food Policy Council. And I'm part of the SNAP Coalition, but I would actually defer to Becca Miller if she's able to, for some of the bigger things that are occurring at the state level. But the SNAP Coalition is just sharing, just today, a town hall meeting that's going to be happening across the state. So people are going to be able to actually convene together in person and talk through the different things that are happening in town halls. So I think it's just more currently of a listening session and also just trying to get all those pieces together. So that's one of the things. And I do know that, yes, the governor has put together a hunger relief task force, a lot of different like state level policy groups are working on that and starting to figure out where we need to draw the money down from. And I know in Massachusetts, there's a rainy day fund. There is some talk about, can we advocate to the governor to draw down money from the rainy day fund to put into specifically food assistance, and whether that's filling the gaps for people that are now going to be pushed off SNAP, I have no idea, but I'll defer to some of those more state level folks like Becca Miller. Put you on the spot, Becca, sorry. Thank you.
I mean, I can give a quick update, but I mostly am here to listen if my colleagues at the Rhode Island Food Policy Council are interested in that. But to Nessa's question, like, I can share an analysis from our partners at the Mass Law Reform Institute, but as you all know, there are like multiple groups of folks that currently receive SNAP that will be cut off in the next coming months to years, depending. So that task force that Christine mentioned isn't like, the work isn't funded, but we expect that there will be a number of funding asks coming out of that force's work. Except our like executive office of like budget and money, it's called Administration and Finance in Massachusetts, is also a part of that task force, so it's a little awkward. But we're really like waiting to see the impact. There are some estimates for like dollar amounts in case the state has the capacity to actually fund SNAP for the populations that will be cut off, including able-bodied adults without dependents, certain immigrant populations, and then a number of, administrative costs that are being reduced by the federal government. We're just waiting to see, again, as you all probably are, what the timeline is looking like from USDA Food and Nutrition Service on some of those. And of course, the payment error rate is the one that we're really concerned about, because that comes with a $500 million price tag for Massachusetts if we're looking at the worst case scenario. So Nessa, I'm happy to talk offline. Sorry to accidentally take this over.
No,
No,
that's
no, thank you.
helpful. And I know that you're probably not on our listserv, so if you want to send pertinent or relevant materials to myself or to Rachel, I think that would be helpful as conversations in Rhode Island continue to take shape.
Thank you so much for both of your contributions. That was really informative. I see two comments from Carla in the chat about how the Food Policy Council can pivot to support mutual aid if local food policy fails to provide, if that's something that's been discussed. And then also if the council has an official position on the tax the rich type legislation being proposed in Rhode Island, which is successfully passed in Massachusetts. And I can answer that in kind of a similar, well, Nessa put a response in there, but I think the answer to both of them is the same, which is that our priorities are determined by the council itself and by the council members. And so we are having our conversation about our upcoming priorities at our September 8th policy retreat. And I think that people are going to be diving into some of those deep questions about what needs to pivot now to respond to the moment that we are in. So we have, so I think, yeah, so I think the answer is that both of those are that the council will pivot as the priorities are established by the council members themselves. On the question about the tax on highest earners, I didn't mention this when I was talking about it, but immediately prior to this session, I was in a meeting updating on the Healthy School Meals for All effort that's happening statewide, not internal here in the council, but the other coalition members, which include the food bank. It includes the teachers union and the Kids First, and a number of other, the American Heart Association, and other leaders. And actually that very topic came up and was in discussion because Healthy School Meals for All, as so many of our questions, really came down to a financial issue. Where is the money coming from, right? And so I think a lot of the conversations around a lot of the things that we're working on promoting around food security are going to circle around to the money has to come from somewhere. So I think that there will be continuing conversations on that. And I would not be surprised if many of our council members and colleagues and partners do increasingly come in support of the Rhode Island legislation that's been in the works on just that same question. Nessa, was that? Yes.
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
add, I think that goes back to one of the things I was saying is part of the funding issues that we've seen is because our House Speaker is extraordinarily frugal. Not a bad thing, but can be a little conservative fiscally. But if he does decide to run for governor, he will not be House Speaker anymore. He cannot run again for his House seat. So there will be a new Speaker, and that will change things in 2026. I'm sorry, 2027 session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
That's very true.
I don't have anything to add at this time. I think it was Carla for bringing up the question, and I think you did a great job of summarizing where the council is at right now. And I expect that we'll be able to talk more about that particular issue in the coming weeks.
Mm-hmm. I just put as a link in the chat to the Revenue for Rhode Island, which is the campaign for the 3% surtax on top 1% earners. And so, yeah, that yes, I think there'll be more conversation for that, and I expect that support for the effort overall will continue to grow. I think let me know if I missed any of the questions that are in the chat. but I think we got through them. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to raise during this period? Just raise your hand or speak up. All right.
I
Thank
saw
you.
there I saw there was a question earlier from Vernon about compost fund priorities and approaching
yeah.
a comprehensive waste management system. And I guess I'll just say, we are working on all of the different ways that we can approach the bill and getting support for, we're seeing pilot programs pop up throughout the state, which we're going to use as examples and models and data for moving forward policy. But ultimately you need some funding in order to make those things happen in a reality, which is part of the impetus behind the bill in the first place. And so again, we're looking at all options and opportunities there for sure.
Great. All right, thank you. This has been a really rich and helpful conversation, I think, in a lot of ways, both to understand what happened in the past year here in Rhode Island and also get perspectives from some of our neighboring states. So I really appreciate that. I want to, with that, thank David for your insight. Thank everybody who's participated and all of the great questions and conversation that we've had. We definitely want to make sure that everyone stays updated throughout the upcoming session. We do our best to communicate all the current happenings and calls. You've heard us mention the listserv. We also have our newsletter, Notes from the Field, which we encourage you to please go and sign up for. Let us know that you'd like to be on the mailing list for that one. You can also sign up to be an on-call advocate, which is what Nessa was discussing earlier. So those are volunteers who stay at the ready to share their perspectives and raise voices to be heard by the legislators, neighbors, and other community members. On-call advocates write emails and letters. They might make phone calls to their state senator or their state rep. They might send text messages and otherwise share information with the community that rally support for policy changes that align with the Food Policy Council's mission. So there's a QR code there on your screen. If you're not yet signed up to be an on-call advocate, please do. The more voices we have, the stronger we are, obviously, and the more we're able to keep these issues in the forefront of the minds of our elected officials. So anyone can join at any time, and we really appreciate your partnership and support in the work. With that, I want to thank everyone again for being here. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of our next session coming up on September 30th on how laws are made in Rhode Island. If you received the invite to this one, I'm assuming that you're on a list and we'll get invite to that one. But please do stay in the loop. This is a great way that we sort of set the foundation for the work in the year and make sure that the whole Rhode Island community is as informed and engaged as possible in how to make good food policy change here in the state. So, given that, thank you so much. This has been a really great session. Nessa, thank you. David, thank you. Nessa, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add that our policy retreat is coming up on Monday, September 8th, and that is open. Everyone is invited to attend. It's in person at the Providence Public Library. If one of the staff members can put the registration link in the chat before we have to end today, I'd appreciate it. That is going to be, it always is, an amazing opportunity for the network to come together in person, eat good food, see each other in real life, and decide together what our top priorities are. I think at this point in Rhode Island and across the nation, this kind of civic engagement in systems change is more important than ever. So please tell people in your circles who you think should be engaged in food systems change. We would love to see you there.
Thank you. Thanks again to everyone. Love to see you at the policy retreat. Isaac has put the link to the registration form there in the chat. And please stay connected. All the staff's emails are right there in on the screen. So we love to hear from you all and hope to see you all very soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Take care.